I don't give a fuck, okay? I care about the president following the law, and that's something that Republicans don't care about.
The law?
The law.
So one mishap happens, and it's all of a sudden
No,
the biggest...
it's one mishap happens, and you can't even concede that it was illegal, even though the fucking White House conceded it was illegal.
Yo, how's it going, man? How are you, buddy?
I'm doing okay.
Yo, I gotta say, I did vote for Trump, but I do fuck with the hair, bro. Shit's kind of nice. Ain't gonna lie, dude.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
So you're saying MAGA don't care about the Constitution, right?
Yes.
So what so far has MAGA as a group done unconstitutionally? I want you to tell me. I won't interrupt. I won't do any of that. I just want you to tell me, please.
There's a lot of things. So when I say MAGA doesn't care about the Constitution, what I mean is that Donald Trump is interested in violating the Constitution in a lot of ways, and MAGA isn't willing to hold him accountable for it. We can look at his trying to revoke birthright citizenship as outlined in the 14th Amendment. We can look at him trying to rob illegal immigrants of due process rights as outlined in 14th Amendment and Supreme Court case law. We can look at his attacks on the First Amendment, like the freedom of the press. We can look at his violations of various Article 1 powers by trying to unilaterally shut down congressionally created agencies or impound certain funds illegally. We can look at all of the shit with Doge, which I think is constitutionally dubious. God, what else is there? There's the talk of the third term, I think, is absolutely against the 22nd Amendment.
It's not going to happen. I hope you know he's just really trying to piss every single liberal off, and it works very well.
Yeah, I think that's a bad
personally,
thing
I
for the
wouldn't
president
support
to do.
that. I mean, I have a 2028 hat, but it's just to really piss off liberals. It's not really to say that I would vote for that. I would never do that. I rebel against him, even though I support Trump. But here's the thing about me, right? I support Trump to an extent. I'm not a MAGA like that. Like, I won't go to the extent and say he's done everything perfectly. He's done a lot wrong, but he's also done some good. And you know what? At this point in time, it's more of everyone's so divided on it. My grandma's the biggest liberal you will ever meet. Like, I'm talking about woke, very woke liberal, and I still love her with all my heart, and she does too. That's what it should be like. You know, I understand how you might feel and be angry about it, but at the same time, this is life, and we got to live through it. I lived through Biden's presidency. You guys got to live through Trump's presidency. It's just how it works.
So with the things that I just outlined, do you disagree that any of that is unconstitutional?
Well, the illegal immigration thing is not. It's actually very constitutional. There's two things in the Constitution or acts or bills that technically, if you went to court, we could actually justify those in court. 70% of all Obama's immigrants did not have due process. They were in cages. It's a known fact. So now that Trump's doing it, it's been a couple, maybe 100 or so, roughly, illegal immigrants getting deported.
Let's talk about it. So. He used the Alien Enemies Act to deport a bunch of people who he was claiming to have engaged in a predatory incursion into the country, and he is removing their ability to challenge their designation as an alien enemy, which has been upheld in Ludecky v. Watson. He ended up getting shot down by the Supreme Court already, saying that these people have the right to bring their challenges through habeas, writ of habeas corpus, and now people like Stephen Miller and Trump himself are talking about suspending habeas corpus. So I don't understand how this complies with their due process rights if they're not being given an administrative the ability for an administrative challenge, the ability for a habeas, or the ability for class action relief.
I mean, honestly, the Aliens Enemy Act, I wrote this on a piece of paper. It's not on my computer. Under this law, the president could authorize the arrest, relocation, deportation of any male over the age of 14 years old that is a part of if they think he's a part of an enemy gang or an invasion to the homeland. That's essentially what the Alien Enemies Act is. I mean, I've wrote it down. I know my history, and that's just what I got from it.
You're kind of. That's kind of accurate. So the thing is that they're able to remove anybody who is over 14 years of age, subject to the proclamation of the Alien Enemies Act. And the proclamation of the Alien Enemies Act is going to say that we are under invasion by this group, or we are at war with this group, so we can remove this group. That's the idea.
Well, the drug trade has gone significantly down since it happened so far. I mean, if you look at it right now on the basis of
that's not the constitutional question. The constitutional question is, should these people that we're rounding up on the grounds of the Alien Enemies Act have the ability to challenge their designation as an alien enemy?
As far as I'm concerned, I don't really know. That's a toss up, man. It's a toss up.
We do know. That's the thing, is that there's a case called Ludecky v. Watson that says the additional question as to whether the person restrained is in fact an alien enemy, 14 years or old. Well, real quick. This is the ruling of Ludecky v. Watson as it relates to the Japanese internment camps in World War II, which also used the Alien Enemies Act. It said the additional question as to whether the person restrained is in fact an alien enemy, 14 years of age or older, may also be reviewed by the courts. That is a binding Supreme Court decision that Donald Trump is trying to not adhere to.
Well, okay. So do you think Kilmer or Brady Garcia should be let back into the United States?
I think they must facilitate his return.
So, well, can I just it's a true fact that I wrote down. If you want to hear, you don't have to. Brady Garcia beat his wife in 2021. Brady Garcia's wife, Jennifer Vasquez Suarez, filed a protective order against him, alleging instances of physical abuse, including being punched repeatedly and scratched. She then filed the second order, trying to protect the children from him, abusing him on a weekly basis. In 2019, Brady Garcia was arrested in Maryland alongside individuals authorities claimed repeatedly that were experts saying the trait of his behavior and his tattoos do show MS-13, citing information from a confidential informant allegedly from his gang membership. The judge agreed and signed his deportation order.
So here's the thing, is that Kilmar Abrego Garcia had a valid withholding order from preventing him from being deported to El Salvador when he was deported to El Salvador.
But do you?
It doesn't matter. Wait, real quick. That is irrelevant. He had a valid withholding order to prevent him from being deported to El Salvador, and they deported him to El Salvador anyway, which was illegal. That got appealed up to the Supreme Court, and they ruled that you must facilitate his return. Now, the Trump administration could facilitate his return and keep him in detention and deport him to a different country. That's fine. But the thing is that we need to make sure that the president is adhering to immigration law when he is deporting people. That's why he must facilitate his return, because
if he's a part of a gang, we can legally withhold
Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Well, first of all, no. Kilmar Abrego Garcia was not deported under the Alien Enemies Act, and two, alien enemies are still provided due process rights under the law.
Well, due process rights. He got due process. He was stood in front of a judge before this all happened.
He got a trial, but they ignored the results of that trial. That is not due process.
My father and my family was gangs, and you're not supposed to go to enemy territory, and that's why you can't go in enemy
territory.
He
had a legal order that was in place saying he could not be deported to that country, and then they ignored that legal order, right?
I mean, they didn't really ignore it. He's had it multiple times before.
They did ignore the order.
Okay, what made you a gang expert, though, to say that his fingers are not
I'm not a gang expert. He could be a part of MS-13. It's irrelevant. The fact of the matter is that an immigration judge had told the Trump administration that you cannot deport this person back to this country, and to do so would be illegal, and the Trump administration did it anyway. And that's why we must facilitate his return to make sure that Kilmar Abrego Garcia can go through the real process without the president removing steps because he finds them inconvenient.
So removing the steps, even though he already had the due process right, was stood in front of a judge.
He did not have his due process right because they ignored the result of... Wait, stop. He did not have his due process rights because they ignored the results of that due process.
So him being a gang member is irrelevant to why we shouldn't deport him, because we don't have to give due process under the Alien Invasion Act. We can deport them.
Wait, no, stop. The Alien Enemies Act, you still do need to give due process rights.
Have you also heard of expedited removal?
Yes. That still complies with due process rights. If you expedite somebody's removal, you still have to give them some ability to challenge their detention.
Someone comes within the country in 14 days, within 100 miles of the border. The Supreme Court has ruled that you do not have the same due process rights.
Correct, but you still do have due process rights. That's the thing. People under the Alien Enemies Act don't need to have a court date, but they have the ability to challenge their designation as an alien enemy.
But again, I've read the bill to you multiple times, or the act.
Yes, I understand that. So this is Austin. This is Civics 101. Okay, a congressionally passed piece of legislation does not overwrite the Constitution.
I mean, technically it does.
No, technically it doesn't, and that is the whole point of the Constitution.
So you're saying we're breaking the Constitution off of deporting Abreu Garcia. So you want him to come back to the country and have a due process, and they get sent back after all the Democrats met with him trying to see if they can get him back in the country. So
yeah, wait, hold on. I'm saying that they need to facilitate his return so he can exercise his due process rights.
Is he a United States citizen?
No.
So he doesn't get the same due process rights?
He gets any due process, though. It's not that he doesn't get the same as U.S. Hold on. It's not. Hold on. It's not that he doesn't get any due process rights just because he's not a citizen. He still has some due process rights, and he has the right for the president to listen to a lawfully given order. The immigration judge lawfully gave the president an order not to deport him to El Salvador, and they ignored it.
Yeah, but why is they so scared to put him back in? I thought he was a good man and that he would never be in a gang and blah, blah, blah.
That doesn't matter, Austin. That doesn't matter. We should have the president follow the law, right?
Follow the law? He is. He deported
somebody.
No,
wait, hold on. He's not. He's not, because Kilmar Abrego Garcia had a valid withholding order when he was deported.
We deported them. I mean, who's going to get him back? You guys really think you guys be able to get him back?
You're not answering the question. I need you to concede this to me. He had a valid withholding order when he was deported, right?
I've already told you, and you haven't answered my question. You already had the due process. Holy shit.
Yeah, they ignored the results of the due process because that withholding order came from his due process. That's what due process is.
So who has said that his due process was not valid?
His due process is not that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that his due process rights resulted in him having a withholding of removal from Venezuela, and Trump ignored that withholding of removal.
He can ignore that removal.
No, he can't.
Yes, he can. After he was already deported. We arrested him at the beginning of January?
Okay. Do you think that the president has the authority to ignore court orders?
No.
Okay. So if a court orders that this certain alien has a withholding order saying that he cannot be deported to Venezuela, and then Donald Trump deports that person to Venezuela, what did he do?
Violated the court.
Right. Which is illegal. One more time?
It's not against the Constitution, then. Yes, okay. After the fact of everything that happened, he's already in Venezuela.
So we agree that this is illegal, right?
That just came out after he was deported.
Stop. We agree that this is illegal, right?
Who? AKG? Or KAG? Kilmar Abrego Garcia? Yes, it's illegal, yes.
It was illegal to deport him.
No.
How?
You realize that this all came up after he was deported, correct?
The withholding order?
Yes!
No, he was given the withholding order in 2019.
So withholding order is going to last 6 years?
Yes, it's going to last until it's appealed.
Well, he ain't coming back as much as you guys try.
Okay, that's not what I'm here to say. Because if you want to just say he's not coming back, I'm just going to throw my hands up and we deported him illegally, but boo-hoo, that's fine. Can we both agree that he had a withholding order, so his deportation was illegal?
Judge made a ruling after he was deported.
The judge did not. It was in 2019, Austin.
This recently just happened. Do you watch
No.
news?
No. I know more about this case than you do, I promise, okay? I've read about this case a lot.
You guys care more about illegal immigrants than you do about your own
Because people. I care about the law. And Trump broke the law.
Trump did not break the law.
Okay.
Then why is he
immigration
not
because it's listen. Please listen. The immigration judge gave the withholding of removal in 2019, okay? Can you tell me what year Kilmar Abrego Garcia was deported?
This year.
Yes. So if he had a withholding order in 2019, and then they ignored that withholding order from 2019 to deport him against that withholding order, that is against the law.
He was deported based on a 2019 accusation from Maryland police that he was a MS-13 gang member. Yeah, so administrative error by many news in US 13. So I don't know.
Can you concede that that was illegal?
It was definitely not illegal, but something definitely happened in the mix of it.
Okay. If it was not illegal, why did the Trump administration's lawyer concede that it was an administrative error?
Well, the Aliens Enemy Act does...
Kilmar Abrego Garcia was not deported under the Alien Enemies Act.
Well, technically, every single one of them is.
Well, technically, that's not true. That's not what he was deported under.
Is grass green?
Yes.
There you go. Can't believe you liberals are
wait,
still...
hold on. No.
Okay,
Kilmar Abrego Garcia was not deported under the Alien Enemies Act. The Alien Enemies Act only pertains to Venezuelans who are part of Tren de Aragua.
That is not a true fact. Now
That
you're
is a
talking
true
out of your
fact.
ass. That is not. Okay,
Do
so
you want to read the? Do you want to read the executive order?
My dad's in the FBI. No matter what gang you are from, no matter if it's from Mexico, Venezuela, Brazil, Argentina, any South American country that is considered a cartel or a gang or a drug moving cartel, you are allowed to be deported.
Yes, not under the Alien Enemies Act.
Yes, you are.
All right, let's look it up. 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 Let's look it up.
I have it in writing right here.
Oh, I'm sure you wrote it down, okay? I'm not disputing that you wrote it down. You are wrong.
So, how am I wrong, though?
Let's read it. This is from Donald
Alien
Trump's...
Enemies Act.
I'm going to... Stop. This is from Donald Trump's invocation of the Alien Enemies Act regarding the invasion of the United States by Tren de Aragua. That's the name of the executive order. It was filed on March 15th, 2025. Okay? He says, I find and declare that TDA is perpetrating, attempting, and threatening an invasion or predatory incursion against the territory of the United States. I direct the Attorney General within 60 days of this proclamation to prepare and publish a letter under signature declaring the policy described in Section 1 of this proclamation as the policy of the United States. What that says is, I proclaim that all Venezuelan citizens 14 years of age or older who are members of TDA are within the United States and are not actually naturalized or lawful permanent residents of the United States are liable to be apprehended, restrained, secured, and removed as alien enemies. It only covers Venezuelans who are a part of Tren de Aragua.
Well, I'm reading the Alien Enemies Act.
The Alien Enemies Act has to be invoked.
Under this law, the president could authorize the arrest, relocation, deportation
Yes,
of anyone, man, male, of the age of 14.
He didn't. It has to be invoked. You have to invoke the Alien Enemies Act in order to deport people. Donald Trump only invoked it for Venezuelans a part of Tren de Aragua.
Do you know what Tren de Aragua stands for?
What Tren de Aragua stands for? Like,
yeah,
what it
do you know
means?
do you know anything about the gang itself, or
No.
then why are you so worried? Like,
I'm sorry. You're just not. The problem is that you're not listening when I'm talking. You're trying. Stop. You're not listening when I'm talking. That's the problem. I've said again and again and again. I don't give a fuck if you return Kilmar Abrego Garcia and keep him detained and then get rid of him after. I don't give a fuck. Okay. I care about the president following the law, and that's something that Republicans don't care about.
The law?
The law.
So one mishap happens, and it's all of a sudden
no,
the biggest
it's one
problem.
mishap happens, and you can't even concede that it was illegal, even though the fucking White House conceded it was illegal.
I just said I'm just gonna agree with you, so like you can just have your moment in your little head of yours, I guess. I mean, that's fine.
I don't want to have my moment. I want you to hold your fucking leaders accountable and not be a part of a cult. Okay?
I already said I'm not a part of a cult. Actually, a cult is.
You
if
are.
You actually look at the meeting. It's a group of people that if you do not like their their opinions or their actions or their thoughts or who they voted for, then you stop loving them and caring for them. That's what the liberals have done. I don't care.
That's not what a cult is. Okay. Now,
Robert,
this is the problem. You have cognitive dissonance. This is the problem. You say that you're not blindly allegiant to Donald Trump, but you're defending him on something that Donald Trump doesn't even defend himself on. The White House lawyers conceded that it was illegal. And you're making excuses for him. Why?
So here's my thing, right? If I don't believe in the same thing you believe, or your family is a diehard Republican, are you still going to love your family members?
Yes, my dad's a Republican.
So my grandma's a Republican. I still love them. So how am I in a cult? A cult exercises in someone that they will not allow
because you can never hold your leaders to account.
I held them accountable for multiple things.
Like what?
What do you mean? Look at his 34 felonies. He's accountable for that shit.
Do you think those 34 felonies were valid?
Were valid? I mean, not the sexual assault ones. The fraud ones, yeah, but not the sexual assault.
You think the fraud ones were... Well, he was never criminally convicted with sexual assault, but you think that the fraud ones were valid?
Yes.
Okay.
I do. And listen, I'm not here to be like, you're wrong. I'm not here to do that. But the only thing that you won't want to argue with me about is the economy and stock market. That's my industry. So if you have a problem with the stock market, you let me know.
Yeah, I care about the president following the law.
Okay, so you don't mind the stock market at all. You don't care.
No, I don't really care.
Okay, that's cool. You know,
I care about following the law. I care about following the Constitution. But it's something that every Trump supporter ends up walking off of, saying that it doesn't matter to them or justifying.
You know, if this is all your truth and you're saying, then I will say you did wrong. So let me get my information. I'm not backing down and put my table between my legs. Let me get information on it. And if you change my mind, I will gladly come back on here another day and say you changed my mind.
Okay, well, I'll follow you. We can have a future conversation about it then.
Okay, perfect. See, this is what I'm talking about. Everyone in the comments be like, hey, look at him getting scared, MAGA getting scared. I'm not getting scared. I'm just not a MAGA like that. I supported Trump, yes, but I do not support every single thing that Trump does.
Something tells me to doubt that, but all right, that's fine. All right, I got to move on. I appreciate you talking. If you want to chat another time,
problem, you have a good one.
then we can. Yep.